make a start, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi alhamdulillah. Okay, so we will do the same as last time. I will start off, I will speak for about 30 minutes, 40 minutes maybe, and then after this we will have questions, inshallah. Yeah, so I want you to start off just by delivering the lecture. So today's lesson, inshallah, is on Islam's contribution to mathematics. So we spoke about, last week we spoke about Islam, last lesson, sorry, we spoke about Islam's contribution to medicine. And we talked about the hospital, we talked about surgical instruments, then we talked about the pharmacy, we talked about inoculation, all these different things. Today we're doing a new topic, which is mathematics, inshallah. So, to begin with, let me ask you guys, we have this definition on the board, but let me ask somebody here, what is mathematics? Anybody want to tell me? If someone said to you, what is math, what would you say? Yeah, Bismillah.
It's science of shapes, science of numbers.
Excellent, yeah? So it's the science or the subject of numbers and shapes, Salim?
Yes, it's a subject that deals with numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers. Yes,
Yeah.
numbers.
Because so it's the science that deals with numbers, but we could also expand that, say shapes and other things as well, yeah? Because, yeah, go on.
Philosophy.
You say philosophy. Okay, can you explain?
Huh?
Can you explain what do you mean by
It's
this?
very hard.
Okay, so you can say it's a complex subject. Because it's a complex, it's a difficult subject, it's a complex subject. Right? Okay, so let's have a look then. We have this definition here. Mathematics is the abstract science. Abstract means something you think about. Yeah? Something that's tafkiran. It doesn't have a reality. Like it's not something you can touch or feel. Yeah? It's something that you think about. So really, like philosophy is an example, maybe. Yeah. So it's linked. It's not obviously the same, but it's linked, maybe. So it's the abstract science of three things. Number. When we talk about numbers, this is called arithmetic. Yeah. Arithmetic. Arithmetic is numbers. Yeah. So arithmetic is specifically about numbers. And as we're going to see, the Muslims really excel in this regard. Numbers, but not just numbers. And the second part of mathematics is quantity. Like the amount of something. For example, this room, how big is this room? The quantity, how many people can fit in this room? Yeah? Even like my hand, for example, how much, I don't know, how many phones can I fit in my hand or something like this, yeah? So this is all a quantity, yeah? Quantity and amounts or something. Quantity is important, particularly for business. Yeah, when we're dealing with business and trade, quantity has a great importance. And then finally we have space. Yes, space, and this is also related to the shapes of things as well. This is related to distance, to geography, all these things. Yeah? So this is what maths is, and the maths is of two types. We have pure mathematics. Yeah? Yeah, pure mathematics is mathematics where it's purely tafkira. It's just the idea, Pure mathematics is just the idea only. So it's not real, none of the ideas are real, it's just what you think about in your mind. Yeah? Then we have applied mathematics. This is what's very important. What's applied mathematics? This is mathematics that we can use in our daily lives. For example, engineering. Anybody here want to tell me what is engineering? Anybody know what engineering is? What is engineering? Huh? Can you explain it in English? It's muhandasa in Arabic, yes? So can you explain engineering in English? What is engineering?
I mean, what kind of engineering are you talking about?
Just give me a general explanation. That's a very good point. There's different types, okay?
Like mechanical engineering, civil engineering.
Excellent. Yeah.
Completely different.
And the public, okay, good. So that's a good answer. We can say this. It depends on the engineering you're talking about. Absolutely, that's a good point.
Finding the problem of something.
Yeah, maybe straight to find the problem or something. Okay, good. Yeah.
It's a process and share something for the beautiful thing.
Good. Yeah. So it's a process. So engineering, we can say, is related to. It's definitely related to mechanics or chemistry. So it's generally related to a process of making something. Yeah. Yeah. What? You at the back?
Maybe it's a science.
Sorry. Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
The activity
of applying sign things to what to design, to build.
Very good. Yeah, so the activity of applying something towards designing or building, creating something. Sorry, go on.
Yes, it is the science of designing buildings or something like that.
Okay, excellent. I think what Wojty said is very true. Engineering is very broad, so there's very different types. You know, so that's one type of engineering, and we have many, many different types. Yeah, so maybe it's hard to define. But what we say is mathematics and engineering are closely linked. Same with physics. Physics, which is really we're going to learn about physics later on, but physics really looks at the universe in many ways. It looks at the big, like science in the biggest way. Yeah? So all of this is linked back to mathematics. Can we do engineering without mathematics? No. There's no engineering without mathematics. There's no physics without mathematics. There's no computer science without mathematics. Many, many things that will not exist without mathematics. That's why if you look in England, for example, the most important subject that we study at school, the most important subject, the most important subject we study in school in England is mathematics. We study mathematics 4 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week in the madaris in the school, more than English. English we study maybe 3 times a week. So mathematics is very, very, very important. Yeah? And that's why it's important for us to understand the impact that the Muslims had in this regard. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at, which is perhaps the most important, is algebra. Algebra. So, we've talked about this Imam before. There was an Imam called Imam al-Khwarizmi. Imam al-Khwarizmi was from Central Asia. He's from Central Asia. And he wrote a famous book. The book was called Al-Jabr wal-Muqabala. And you, mashallah, don't understand Arabic better than me what this means. Muqabala is like exchanging, isn't it? Yeah, Al-Jabr wal-Muqabala. This was a famous book that he wrote. This book had a huge ta'athur, it had a huge impact on the Muslim world and on the whole world in general. It changed mathematics forever. It changed the history of mathematics. It changed the direction, the wijha of mathematics from here to here. Completely changed everything. It was called Al-Jabr wal-Muqabala. Al-Jabr is where we get algebra. Algebra from. Now again, when I studied mathematics, I studied mathematics in a school in England. From the age of 11 onwards, all we really study is algebra. That's it. So when I was from the age of 5 till 11, it was numbers, arithmetic, adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying. From 11 plus, it really all you study is algebra, to be honest with you. All you study is algebra. The speakers okay? No problem.
So how?
Okay. Yeah, so all we really study is algebra. Okay? So what is algebra? Before we look at the definition here, anybody want to tell me here, what is algebra? Anybody tell me what is algebra? Anybody know here? Yeah, Mr.
Is it a conversion between two quantities?
Good, mashallah. So it's literally an equation that looks at the link between 2 quantities. That's good, mashallah. Yeah, go you at the back.
It's a kind of calculation that makes something invisible to something visible.
Excellent, very good, yeah. So it takes something that's unknown. When you say invisible, it's something unknown, something we don't know, and it makes it known. MashaAllah, very good. Yeah, anybody else? Well, what would we say? What is algebra? Okay, I think there's some good definitions there. Yeah, mashallah. So let's have a look then. So algebra is, here we have it on the board, it's the part of mathematics in which letters and other general symbols, yeah, so letters and other general symbols are used to represent numbers and quantities in formulae and equations. Yeah. So in other words, we have a letter like X or Y or Z. This letter represents a number. We don't know the number, we have to find the number. This is algebra. As a better definition maybe is the one below this. Algebra is the study of mathematical symbols, alamat, symbols, alamat. It's the study of mathematical symbols and the rules for changing, manipulating or changing these symbols. It is a unifying thread of almost all of mathematics. So all of mathematics comes together in the idea of algebra. So whether it's mathematics that happens with physics, whether it's mathematics that happens with engineering, with all of its different types, whether it's mathematics that happens with building things, architecture, or art, geometry, whatever the mathematics is, we will always need algebra. You find this out very, very quickly. When you study mathematics, very, very quickly, the first thing you understand is I have to learn algebra. Without algebra, I'm nothing. I have no mathematics. Yeah? You won't get anywhere without. You can add and take away, but that's all you can do. Once you go past adding and taking away, the only thing we can use is algebra. And then after algebra comes calculus. This is the next thing after algebra, like this. Yeah? But without algebra, we have no foundation. And this is why Imam al-Khwarizmi is known as the father of mathematics. Yeah, it's called the father of mathematics, as if mathematics was born from him. Yeah? Literally, there's no mathematics without him. Yeah, so he was a very, very important figure. Who was Imam al-Khwarizmi? Imam al-Khwarizmi, he was also the mudir, he was also the head or the leader of Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom. Can anyone here remember? What's the House of Wisdom, Bayt al-Hikmah? Anyone remember? What's the House of Wisdom? Yeah, Bismillah.
Library in Baghdad.
MashaAllah, excellent. It's a library and we can say a learning center. Almost like a university in Baghdad. That was the most important learning center in the world, and he had the biggest library in the world, the House of Wisdom. Very, very famous. And Imam al-Khwarizmi, for his time, maybe 40 years, something like this, 40, 50 years actually, he was the main imam, he was the main scholar that was in charge of it, he was the main teacher. Yeah, and he was the head, he was the mudir of this House of Wisdom. So he had many other influences. The other thing, Imam al-Khwarizmi, what does his name mean in Latin? Anyone remember? If you take al-Khwarizmi is a Persian name, isn't it? It's not Arabic, it's Persian. But if we take al-Khwarizmi and we change it into Latin, what word do we get? Yeah, go on.
Algorithm.
Algorithm, mashallah, very good, excellent. Yeah, algorithm. And algorithms, we know about algorithms now. Yeah, algorithms are running everything in the world now, and even more now in the future of robots. The world now that we're coming in is the world of robots. Yeah, so the world of robots everything will be algorithms. Allah protect us. Alhamdulillah that we're in a safe place here, inshallah. The rest of the world, Allah Alam, what's going to happen with the robots. Yeah, okay, so algebra is the one thing that brings all of mathematics together and is the most important. It's really the only subject. It's 90% of mathematics is algebra. Yeah? Okay. So what do we see here? Here we see a revolutionary change. Revolutionary change, like a complete change. Tabdeel al-kamil, we can say. Yeah? A complete change now from one to the other. This is why I mentioned it's written in this book. There's a teacher now, it's called George Saliba. George Saliba. He's a teacher, Spanish American, I think he is. Yeah, and he teaches at a famous university, the University of Stanford in America. He's a historian of science. Yeah? So he studied the history of science. He tells us that there is no history of science without Islam. He says there is no history of mathematics without Islam, and he says there's no book on science except that it relies upon the Muslims. Okay? Every single book of science and every single book of mathematics. So what happens here then? We have here, and we need a bit of mathematical knowledge to understand this, but just to explain it in a very basic way. Before algebra, we could only use maths for one or two things. Very simple, I'm explaining this now, because to understand this you need to know, I'm not an expert in mathematics, I'm not pretending to be. Yeah, so before we had, we used to use maths for very small things, distance, shapes, that's very, very basic things. Now when algebra came along, now suddenly it expanded. Now you can use algebra for many things. You can use algebra, use mathematics for many applications. So mathematics now becomes useful in accounting, for example. It becomes useful in iqtisad, in economics. Yeah, it becomes useful in many, you can think 20, 30, 40 years. In geography, mathematics is very important. If you want to study geography past basic level, it's all mathematics. Now, all of these subjects now is to mathematics. None of this would have happened without algebra. Yeah? So it allows for many different applications. Architecture is another famous example. If you study architecture at university, it's all mathematics. It's all mathematics. So this is a big change. And this is where we have to remember, very, very important. I said this last lesson, that remember what happened in Europe is the disbelievers, the kuffar, they hid this history. They wanted to hide Islam from the history books. Why? Because they didn't want people to enter Islam. You have to remember, 400 or 500 years ago, you had the Ottomans, yeah, the Uthmaniyun, yeah, the Dawla Uthmaniyya, the Ottomans. Where were they? They were in Hungary. They were right in Europe, yeah, and they were very, very worried that if people learn about Islam, all of Europe would become Muslim. This was a very real possibility. So what did they do? They didn't want people to know about these great Muslim thinkers, about these great Muslim scientists. Because people learn this, then they'll enter Islam. Because they understand, mashallah, this is a religion of science, this is a religion of thinking, tafkir, all these things. Yeah? So they hid this history. This is an example. So if you look now at, if you study the history of mathematics in Europe, they will tell you the Greeks, and then they went from the Greeks straight to the German mathematicians, Leibniz and these people. They miss out this part in between, which is Al-Khwarizmi and the other great scientists. Yeah? Okay, there. What else do we have here? Another famous mathematician, Al-Karaji. So this is another famous man. So we have Al-Khwarizmi, we also have Al-Karaji. So what did Al-Karaji do? He developed algebra further. Yeah? So Al-Khwarizmi he reached the asas, the foundations, the principles. Al-Karaji came and he developed them further. And basically, what Al-Karaji did is he created the algebra, that he established the algebra that we study today in school. If you go to any school in the world now, east, west, north, south, any school in the world now, like in India, for example, India, mashallah, they're very, very good at mathematics. Most of the leading, maybe 80 or 90% of the leading mathematicians in the world are from India. They're very, very intelligent. The Chinese also very good at mathematics. The Japanese, the Koreans, the Far East, very good at mathematics. All of them will study in school what Al-Karaji did. Yeah? And here we have some example. Without algebra. So if you have no algebra, what does that mean? It means we will have no computers. Number one, no computer programming. Is it possible to have a world without computers today? Is it possible to imagine a world without computers? No. Possible to imagine a world without the internet, without the smartphone? We can't imagine this. Yeah? Number two, architecture. All of these great buildings. You know the churches. What is churches? Kanisa, yeah, in Arabic. What's the plural? Aknas. Aknas, yes. Akanis. Akanis, yeah. Okay, I won't say the Kanisa plural. Yes, the churches, all of them were actually designed on Muslim architecture. This is very important. You know the shapes that they used, the designs that they used, they took them from Muslim architecture. Either from Spain or from Italy or even France. The most famous cathedral, the most famous church in Europe. Does anyone know what it's called? The most famous church in Europe? Probably, maybe not. It's called Notre Dame in France. The Notre Dame Cathedral. This is the big cathedral in Europe, the big church. The style is exactly the same as the great Masjid of Qurtuba. You know the Masjid of Qurtuba, which they changed into a church when they took over. It has this style called rib vaulting like this. Yeah, it's connected like this. This style, which is based on mathematics. You can't create this style unless you know mathematics and geometry and also algebra. This style is the same style that we see now. There's a brilliant book that's been written on this by a non-Muslim lady. I forget her name now. It's a brilliant book that she's written, and she explains exactly how all of the designs of all of the churches of England, of Europe, all of them, and she shows exactly where they came from. This came from this masjid, this came from this masjid. She links them all back together. Some of them came from Central Asia, Khorasan, these places. Some of them came from Spain. Most of them came from Spain, because Spain was obviously right next to Europe. Yeah? So all of architecture, many different forms of engineering, chemical, mechanical, and other forms, and also physics. Yeah? All of this is not possible without algebra. So let me ask you a question then, something for us to think. Let's just say, yeah, obviously this is a theoretical. Let's just say Imam al-Khwarizmi didn't exist. Let's say Imam al-Khwarizmi did not create algebra. Does that mean today, right now today, does that mean we wouldn't have any computers or architecture? So what does it mean then?
It would be it.
Actually, did you say be later? Yeah, it'd be exactly. So if Imam al-Khwarizmi would have delayed everything by maybe 300 or 400 years. That's a big thing. Yeah, 300 or 400 years, so all of that development that took place would have been delayed by 300 or 400 years. That is the brilliance of this man, mashallah. Yeah, and where does his inspiration come from? It came from ultimately from the Quran itself. This desire to learn. Yeah, it's very, very important that we, as Muslims, we don't separate between like Islamic knowledge and non-Islamic knowledge. There's no separation. All knowledge is Islamic, depending on your niyyah, depending on your intention. So when Imam al-Khwarizmi was developing algebra, it's the same for him as if he's studying the Quran or Arabic. There's no difference. And what's interesting, you know, which place was algebra developed? Which place? The Qarwan University in Morocco. So a lot of the work that Al-Karaji and people, all the people did around him was in the Al-Qarwan University. The same place where they were studying fiqh, studying all the Islamic sciences, Quran, Hadith, etc. They were also developing algebra in the same place. They didn't have a separate place that this is for the other subjects and this is for the Islam. No, it was the same. It was the same. So we shouldn't separate out between the Islamic subjects and the non-Islamic. So it's very important. Many people do this now. Even I know many of my friends from the West, from the Gulf who live in the UK, they say, I want my child to learn Islam, that's all. I don't want you to learn anything else. Why not? I don't want you to learn math, science, as if it's something. No, this is an incorrect, it's actually a wrong, very wrong understanding. It's a very, very wrong understanding. It's something that we shouldn't have. Okay, so here we go. Now, what do we see here now? Further development. So we have something called algebraic geometry. Geometry is about shapes. Yeah? Geometry is about shapes. So now they started to use algebra for geometry. And this allowed for so many new things to come into being. This was established by Al-Tusi. Al-Tusi, from his name you can tell you where he was from. It's from Central Asia, mashallah. Yeah? So Al-Tusi. And number theory and patterns were also established by the Muslims. So number theory is what led to coding, a lot of computer coding and these things that we talk about now. Even the system, what is the computer built upon? The computer is built, the asas of the computer is the binary code. 0, 1, that's the computer language, we know this, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Where did 0 come from? Sifr. It came from India. How did the West find out about Sifr? The Muslims. They didn't even have an idea of Sifr. They didn't even know that there was such a thing as 0. So they found out about the idea of 0 from the Muslims. Yeah, and that's the 0, 1, 0, 1, that's the basis of the code. And then here we have this thing here, the gift of numerals themselves. Numbers, the gift of numbers was given to the world by the Muslims. Before the Muslims, what numbers did they use it? Does anyone know? What numbers did they used to use in Europe? What numbers did they use in Europe before the Arabic numbers? Anybody know? Okay, so they use Roman numerals. Now, Roman numerals are very difficult. It's very hard to add large numbers. It's very hard to do calculations with Roman numerals. I won't demonstrate, we haven't got time now, but it's just the way the Roman numerals are written. So, what happened was there was a pope. Put your hand up here. Anyone here, what is a pope? Does anyone know who the pope is, or what a pope is? Anybody here know? The pope. Anybody know? Huh?
Pope.
The pope. So the pope, yeah, what?
P-O-P.
P-O-P-E. You know that? No problem. The pope is the leader of the Christian church, the Catholic church particularly, yeah? So he's like the imam. Yeah, he's like the leader of the Catholic Church. He is the so now today, for example, we have a Pope today. What's his name? I forget his name now. There was a famous one, Pope John Paul. But anyway, so he's the leader. The Pope now at the moment is not very. He doesn't really like Islam that much. He has a lot of problems with Islam. Islam, unfortunately. But some of them have been okay. Anyway, there was a man, before he became the Pope, this man, he was a Christian priest. And he was from France, I think he was from France or Italy, I can't remember. He was from Europe. He traveled to Spain, and then he also traveled to North Africa, Morocco and these places, and he studied and he learned. And he learned mathematics, he learned all these subjects. Then when he went back to England, well, not back to England, sorry, back to France, back to Europe, France or Italy, he became the Pope. He became Pope Sylvester. That was his name, Pope Sylvester. This Pope is the one who introduced numbers into Europe. So you know we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know the numbers that you see, those numbers are from Arabic numerals. Those numbers are from the Muslims. So even the numbers that they have now, they wouldn't have. So forget about algebra, forget about this, even the numbers themselves, something as basic as that. It's very, very important for us because I've traveled, alhamdulillah, I've traveled to a few places in the Muslim world. I was in Morocco, I spent some time in Egypt, I've been in Turkey, now we're here in Tanim. Wherever I go in the Muslim world, everybody thinks that the Muslims, the law, they don't do anything. And the Kuffar, the Europeans are very, very high, they've done everything. Everybody thinks this. Everybody, I've talked to many, many different people. I've talked to university students, I've spoken to teachers, I've spoken to normal people, just people on the streets, I've spoken to business people. All of them have this idea. But it's wrong. It's completely wrong. The reality, the truth is the complete opposite. It's the complete opposite. And it's our job. This, what I'm teaching now here, I teach this to children in England. 12, why to children? Because I tell them it's your job now to go and teach other people. You are young, now you have to go and tell other people about the izzah of the Muslimin and the izzah of Islam. You have to explain this to people because people have forgotten. They seem to think that Islam is something low. This is what people think, unfortunately. Allah protect us. They think this, and then you're surprised when the kuffar don't have any respect for us. They don't have any ihtaram for us. But we don't even have any respect for ourselves. So how can we expect other people to respect us and honor us? So this is all part of our history. If people don't know their history, they can never understand their true greatness. Yeah? Okay, what else do we have here? Okay, so just a few things about mathematics. Just a few things about mathematics. So why is mathematics useful? So we've talked about algebra, so we've talked about physics, we've talked about engineering. Another thing is business. Business and accounting is based upon mathematics. Okay? Economics, iqtisad is based upon mathematics. I studied iqtisad at university. I did a degree in iqtisad, in economics, and you know most of it is maths. 60 or 70% is mathematics. Yeah? So this is a very interesting point. This is someone called Roger Bacon. Who was Roger Bacon? Roger Bacon was an Englishman. He was from England and he traveled. I think he actually went to Al-Azhar as well. He traveled the Muslim world. I think he even sat in the halaqat in Al-Azhar many years, many centuries ago. Roger Bacon, he used to wear Arab robes, like an Arab thobe. He used to wear Arab clothes, he used to wear a turban, and he used to dress like the Arabs. He learned Arabic very, very well. Yeah, why? And he used to say to his people in England, he said, we have to learn from the Arabs. And people said, well, you're crazy, or you've left Christianity, you've done Ridda, all these kind of things. He said, no, I'm still a Christian, but this is the knowledge that we have to learn. Yeah, so he was someone who was very, very clever, and he was very advanced. He was far ahead of his time. So what did he say? He says mathematics is the door, it's the bab, and it's the key, it's the miftah. It's the door and key of the sciences and things of this world. Yeah? So if you want to understand all of the ulum, you want to understand all of the different things of this world, mathematics, it is evident, يعني is yubayyin or is mubin, it is evident, yeah, it is clear, yeah, wadih, that if we want to come to certitude without doubt, if we want yaqeen, bidun shak, yeah, we want certainty without any doubt, we want haqq, yeah, truth without any mistakes, without error. We must place the foundations of knowledge in mathematics. Okay? So Roger Bacon here is saying that all of knowledge is based upon mathematics. Yeah, this was his understanding. Yeah, all of mathematics. So we see this. Yeah, so business and accounting, really all of these subjects, all of these subjects that we see developed within this time in Europe, all of it is from mathematics. And then I mentioned this before, the concept of the idea of zifr, of the zero, was from the Muslims. Yeah, and we know that the computer itself is based upon this. There, okay. There's a couple of other things here. We don't need to go through this. It's just a little. Actually, we go through this. This is about certainty, what we call yaqeen. This is in English. In English, it's a long word. We call it epistemology. Epistemology is the subject of learning. How do we know the truth? كيف ندرك الحقيقة الأشياء? This is called epistemology. Epistemology in English. It's a long word. Epistemology. Yeah? How do we know the reality, the truth of things? So we know this from the scholars within our tradition. We know that this time we arrive at certainty. We learn certainty through the mind, through our senses around us, etc. Okay? But what everybody agrees upon now, both the Muslim and the Kafir agree upon one thing. What do the Muslim and the Kafir agree upon? They agree that mathematics is sound. Nobody disagrees. If you say to somebody, 1 plus 1 is 3, they think you're crazy. A Muslim or a Kafir will agree that 1 plus 1 is 2. Yeah, certainty, isn't it? If I'm dreaming, or if I'm asleep, if I'm awake, 1 plus 1 will still always equal 2. Yeah, so mathematics has a certainty to it. Yeah, it has a certainty in that regard, and this is what they understood. Yeah. What we see, we learn is when we look at falsafa. We will study falsafa. You know the falsafa of the Europeans. They made one mistake. They took their falsafa from the Muslims, but they ignored the Quran. Yeah? They didn't understand the Muslims, the ideas of the Muslims were from the Quran. Yeah? So they took the ideas and they took away the Quran, and then they tried to understand the world, and that's why they went of the way of the Dhalin. In Europe, they went the way of the Dhalin, the Christian mistake. Yeah, why did they go the way of the Dhalin? Because they took all this knowledge from the Muslims, but then they didn't take the Quran with it. Why? Because of kibr. Yeah? They were too arrogant to accept the Quran, but they were okay with accepting everything else. Yes, because of this, they went astray. Okay, and then one final thing here, a couple of final things, sorry. Another thing is trigonometry. Anyone here, does anyone know what trigonometry is? What's trigonometry? Anybody know? So this is called mathematics, so if maybe not even interested, I don't know what it is in Arabic, I should have checked. Trigonometry is about, for example, angles, shapes of triangles, and how they come together. Trying to figure out the length of one side of a triangle, another side, hakada, yeah? What do you call a triangle in Arabic? Muthallath. Yeah, muthallath, yeah? So you want to know one side of a muthallath like this. This is trigonometry. So this again is very important. We studied this in school. I was for 5 years, maybe out of my 5 years, 2 years, we spent studying trigonometry. So, arba'un min al-mi'a, what you learn at school in mathematics, trigonometry. So, who started trigonometry is from the Muslims. Why did the Muslims start trigonometry? They were looking at the connection between different planets. For example, we have, well, how do we say planets in Arabic? Kawakib. Not that. The sky. So planets, for example, you have Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, these different planets. Kawakib, yeah, okay. So the Muslims, mashallah, they wanted to understand, like Mars is here, Earth is here, Venus, Neptune. Used today for so many parts of our life. Yeah. So they developed trigonometry tables, and they introduced these again to the Europeans in many different ways. Okay, so what's trigonometry used for today? Trigonometry is used today for astronomy, ilm al-falak, yeah, which we're going to look at. Still. It's used for cartography. What is cartography? Anyone know what cartography is? This word here, cartography. Anyone know? What does cartography mean? Okay, so cartography is the science of making maps. Yeah, you know when you make a map. What's a map? خطة. خريطة. علم الخرائط. Cartography is علم الخرائط. علم الخرائط. Yeah. So cartography is the subject that deals with how you design, how you make maps. Cartography. This is from trigonometry. Without trigonometry, you can't do this. Yeah, you can't do this. And then navigation. Navigation is like traveling. If you're traveling on a ship, or if you're traveling like GPS is navigation. Yeah, it's called sat-nav, satellite navigation. Sat-nav. Yeah. So navigation is traveling. Yeah. So if I want to know, and this is very important for the Muslims. If you live in Algeria, Aljazair, and you want to go on Hajj, you have to know navigation. Yeah, you have to know. If you live in India and you want to travel to South Africa, you have to know navigation. Yeah, you have to know how did my ship go from here to here. Yeah, so because the Muslims had to know these things for their trade, and also to know the direction of the Qibla as well. They had to know wherever you are in the world, you have to know the direction of the Qibla. Yeah, this is why they say it's amazing. You know the Dome of the Rock. You know the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock. Let's ask them, what's the name of the Dome of the Rock? Do you know what's the name of this masjid? Qubbat Safra. Yeah? This Dome of the Rock, this masjid now. You know, recently they did a test on this masjid on the Qibla. How accurate? What is the diqqa of the jiha of the Qibla? Because remember, when was the Dome of the Rock built? Very early on, wasn't it? The Dome of the Rock was built, mashallah, maybe 40, 50 years after Hijrah, something like this, very early on. So they did a test and they found it's very accurate. That is exactly on the direction of the Qibla, mashallah. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they would have had great knowledge of trigonometry, the great knowledge of geography, of navigation, direction. They knew this very well from the very early people, from the first very early generation, the Sahaba, the Tabi'in, very early generations. They knew, they had a very precise understanding, because the early generation, the Sahaba, these early people, they would do everything with itqan. Everything they did it with itqan. So they would master things, and when it comes to the direction of the prayer, it's very important. It's not something that you want to get wrong, because it has to be perfect. Yeah, you have to try your best to make it perfect. Yeah, so we see this thing. Okay, and the final thing here, geometry. So apart from algebra, the Muslims also developed geometry. So what's geometry? Is the science of shapes. Yeah, the science of shapes. Now, what did they start doing? They started to develop different things. They developed something called conic section theory. A cone, what's a cone? What's a cone in Arabic? A cone, yeah. It's like this, and I can draw a cone. Does anyone know what a cone is in Arabic? A cone? Like an ice cream cone. With a cone shape. Cone, this shape. Let me draw it. Just so you understand each other. Okay, so a cone is like this. I'm not very good at math. It's like this. Yeah, a cone. Right? Yeah, a cone. Yeah. So they developed this. They developed what is called conic section theory. Yeah. So they developed this with the short look. This again is very significant for people who are in this field. People who are engineers, they understand this is important. Architects, these people, they understand the importance of this. And also the heptagon. The heptagon is a shape that's seven-sided shape. Yeah. So these are amongst the most important things that the Muslims, alongside many other things. Yeah. Now Islamic art and Islamic architecture, all of it is based on geometry. So all of these beautiful. Now this is another very important nukta. Very important nukta is, if you go anywhere in the world now, and you ask people, for example, if you go to India, If you ask somebody, ask a non-Muslim, what's the most beautiful building in India? They say the Taj Mahal, built by a Muslim. They say it, no doubt. You know when they have the advertisement, come to India, what's the picture that they have in the front? Obviously it's Taj Mahal. When you go to Spain, what's the picture that's on the front? The Alhambra Palace. To this day now, you go to Spain, particularly the Alhambra Palace, and this particular one in Granada. Yeah. When you go to, even when they want people to come to Palestine, or what they now call Israel, what do they show? They show the Dome of the Rock. They show, that's the picture that they show. Even though they have all these other sites, institutions, they don't show them. They don't show the oldest church. They have the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. They don't show this. Why? Because the Muslims produce beauty. The most beautiful civilizations were the Muslim civilizations. They recently now, they did a study and they asked many different historians from all over the world. They asked them which is the greatest civilization, ما هو أكبر حضارة في العالم تاريخيا, from the beginning to the end, which is the greatest one, and most of them said Al-Andalus. Most of them said Al-Andalus is the greatest civilization. Yeah, this is the peak of what we call like civilization, the greatest civilization, peak of Hadara. Yeah, so they understand this. If you go now, if you go to England now, they have something called auctions. You know what an auction is? Like for example, I want to sell this phone, and Ahmed says £10, Wendy says £20, Salim says £30. You know auction, yeah? Okay, yeah, so you understand. Yeah, so an auction. Now, if you go to England now, when they do the auctions, you know what they are selling? They're selling the carpets, the rugs that the Muslims made. Or they're selling the spoons and the knives and the forks that Muslims used to eat from. Now they sell them for 1 million, 5 million, 10 million pounds. Yeah, these are the most expensive things to them. And these are just things that the Muslims used to eat from. Yeah, so all of the art, very important, for da'wah to the non-Muslims, this is very important. Art is probably the best way to give da'wah to the non-Muslim, because it's beautiful and everybody, the fitrah loves beauty. Yeah, the fitrah loves those beautiful things. Yeah, all of that is based upon geometry. So all of it comes back to mathematics. So all of these amazing buildings and all of these things that we see all over the world from the Muslims, whether it's from the masajid or the other things that we're talking about, all of them come back to mathematics. Yeah, all of them come back to mathematics, inshallah. So that was some of the key points I wanted to make. Inshallah, we can stop the live stream now. Inshallah, we can stop the live stream. Inshallah, we'll go into some discussions. Firstly, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions on what we've learned about today before we go on to the other things? Anybody want to ask anything about today? Coning. So this is a cone. You know what I draw here? This is a cone. So conic section is like a juz. So conic section theory is like it's a subject in mathematics. Yeah, it's a subject in mathematics. Like I said, I'm not a mathematician, so I don't understand mathematics in that detail. Yeah, and we don't just know the general ideas. Yeah, inshallah. So conic section theory.